Wasted money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deepest seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. But time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to another of our GCSE economics live streams, getting ourselves ready for paper 2 next week. I hope paper 1 went well for you. That's done and dusted now, so we can forget about it for a little while and just concentrate on paper 2. Tonight we're going to concentrate on government objectives, economic objectives, on the basis that if you want any tips and ideas about or revision on the government policies, we did that during the Easter break, and have a look at our replay there. Warm welcome to anybody who's joining us live. Do join in using the chat window as ever. If you're watching this on replay, of course, you can take a little bit more time over the pretty fast-paced activities that Nicky and I have got for you tonight. Good evening, Nicky. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm relieved paper 1 is over. Looking forward to paper 2.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get on to the macro stuff now tonight. So we are looking at government objectives. I think we'll get straight into those. Nicky, if you're okay with that, you okay
Yeah,
if we get
perfect.
started? Wonderful. Right, as we have been doing many times before, we're going to start with a few true falses. So let's see a T or an F, a true or false, a smiley icon or a frowny icon in your responses. So here we go. Here's our first statement. The UK's March unemployment rate was 4.5%. This is the highest rate of this decade. So now we know we're going to have to do a little bit of understanding about what's been going on in the real world of macroeconomics when it comes to our exam. What do we know has been going on in the UK, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years? I'm just having a quick look across at the chat window. We've got lots and lots of truths coming in. The 4.5% unemployment rate this March just gone, it's the highest this decade. Well, actually, that's false. That's false. So, what do we know about what's going on in the UK economy? That's what your examiner is expecting you to have some general understanding of. Now, of course, COVID came along at the beginning of this decade, 2020, and there was a knock-on impact on the economy during the COVID outbreak, but particularly there was a little time lag, and unemployment and a few other economic objectives went a little bit worse during that period as well. So remember that. It spiked in 2021, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, at around 5.3%, which is relatively high, particularly over the last 15 years or so. So 4.5% as it currently is relatively high for the UK during this century. So it is worth being aware of the relative nature of unemployment over a period of time. Right. Let's try another one. The Bank of England's target inflation rate is 2.0%. Nice and straightforward statement on the screen. Do you think that is true, or is that false? Let's have a think about what we think there. So nice and straightforward for us. Now, just to remind you, if you're thinking about your answer to this, the interest rates in the UK are not set by the government. They're set independently by the Bank of England. The government deliberately set that up so that the so that the interest rates wouldn't be determined by political things or political reasons, but would be just changed due to what's going on in the economy. Lots and lots of truths this time. Again, so absolutely 2.0% is their target rate. And what they have to do is, if it ever gets above 3% or below 1%, they have to report back to the government and say what they're going to do about it in terms of what they might do in terms of changing interest rates. So yes, 2.0% is the target rate for the Bank of England. Be aware, again, just thinking about recent trends, inflation got very, very high recently, and that hit its highest peak in 2022 at around about 11%. So at the moment, it's much, much lower than that. Predictions are that inflation is going to go up this year. Right, one more, true or false. Over the last 10 years, the UK's current account has primarily been in deficit. Do you think that is true or false? What do we think? Do we think that the UK has primarily been in a deficit with regards to its current account, its trade in goods and trade in services? Lots and lots of truths this time again, and absolutely it is the case. The UK has had a current account deficit for most quarters over the last 10, 20 years. There have been one or two where the UK has been in surplus, but for the most part, the UK is trading in a deficit. There we go, Nicky. A few true and falses. Some nice responses from the those watching the live stream. So we'll get cracking with the multi-choice questions.
Okay, so this evening I've got 5 multiple choice questions for you, all around economic objectives. So let's have a look at this first one. Which of these is not? Be careful. Read the question very slowly and carefully for these negative ones. Which of these is not a government objective relating to economic performance? Remember, it's performance, so we're thinking about how do we measure how well is an economy doing. So which one of those might not be about the performance of an economy? Let's have some answers. Let's have a look and see who's coming in. Yeah, we've got some great answers coming in. Well done. That's brilliant. Yes, price stability. Of course, we're looking at a low and stable inflation rate. So that is one of them. Fair distribution of income is another one. Low unemployment is another one, but low level of interest rates, that's not a main government objective. Of course, the Bank of England sets the interest rates through its monetary policy. So well done indeed for those getting B. Jasmine, flying start as always. Okay, let's have a look at question 2. Gross domestic product, or you might see it or know it as GDP. What is it defined as? A lot of words on this slide, but you have to be careful. Gross domestic product. We're always talking about GDP. Which one of these is it? So let's have a look through those answers. It is actually D. Yes, well done, John. Thank you very much. The market value of goods and services produced by factors of production within a country. It's within a country because it's domestic, and it's the market value. What does that mean? It's the price they are sold at. So, of course, GDP itself as a figure does include distortions from inflation. To get rid of those distortions, you actually need to be talking about real gross domestic product. But just remember, it is within a country, it's the market value. It doesn't matter if foreigners made it or if foreign companies made it or British people or whatever. It's made within these four edges of this country, if you like. And it's the market value. Well done. Let's move on to number 3. Which of these describes a type of unemployment that occurs when there is a general fall in demand within the economy? So all of those there are actually real types of unemployment. So Elsa's come straight in with A. Just be a little bit careful. We need to read the question very, very carefully. When there is a general fall in demand in the economy. So Elsa's having a rethink. You're now saying C. D. Kachi is saying C. Let's have a look at the answer, John. It's actually cyclical. And there is a little bit of a hint here because cyclical cycle, business cycle. So this type of unemployment that occurs when there's a general fall in demand would be during the economic cycle, during a recession or a slump in an economic cycle. Seasonal is just in one market. So it might be the fruit picking market, or it might be in ice cream or something like that comes and goes with seasons. The question asks for a general fall. So just be really, really careful about reading the question. Let's move on to number 4. Which of these would be classified as an item that would be shown in the level of a person's wealth rather than their income? Excuse me. So many students get wealth and income mixed up, but you as economists, you know exactly what the difference is. So income is a reward for work or a reward for owning an asset. Wealth is something different. It's the stock of assets. So which one of those? Now you've got it. Look at you all fly. This is fantastic. You're all coming in with the right answer, which is perfect. It is the value of their house. The value of your house is your wealth. It doesn't give you an income. It's just a number on a website somewhere. Let's move on to question number 5. Right. Okay. There are 2 causes of inflation. I always ask my students to don't just write about inflation, write about cost push inflation or the other one. And I'm going to ask you about that in a moment. That's why I'm not revealing. So which of these best describes cost push inflation? Let's have a look and see. What can we see? And when you know the answer, as you are, yes, they're all flying in. Well done. Now, what's the other one called? And if you can think of what the other one is called, give me the answer that would be appropriate if the question was about that type of inflation. So a little bit of extension work here. So Lucy, nearly, it's not demand pill, it's demand pull. But I'm sure that's what you meant to type. You are quite right. Does anybody know if any of those? So you're saying B, Flux. Well done. You are right. But anybody got any other answers? Let's have a look for demand pull. It could be C. Because if I can get hold of more credit, I could buy more stuff. And if I have a higher personal allowance, I get to keep more of my income. So I might go out and spend. So all the other 3 answers would contribute or create demand pull inflation. Well done, guys. That's brilliant. Back to John.
Yeah, I just noticed as well, Nicky, in the chat window, Bethany was asking about frictional unemployment whilst you were on that question. I think somebody replied to in the chat window, frictional unemployment is those people who are between jobs, who have left one and who are just moving on to another. I've got that right, haven't I? So's Oliver as well.
Yes.
You'd agree with that. Brilliant.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let's move on then. Let's do one of our umbrella activities. So, when you think about government objectives and how they might be assessed in your exam, lots and lots of questions relating to that topic will be sort of definition style questions, a little bit like some of those multi-choice questions Nicky's just been asking. Occasionally, though, you will get government objectives questions which are thinking about the positives and negatives. So we're going to do a couple of things like that tonight. This is the first of those. So which of the items that are on screen, so you've got 8 items on screen there, which of those might be considered as negative impacts of high inflation? Negative impacts of high inflation. I'm going to give you a minute. That minute has started. So as soon as you spot one, start putting it into the chat window. There is more than one. There's several in there. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many, but as soon as you see them, start putting them into the chat window. Thank you, Bethany, coming with 3 directly. That's wonderful. 3 of them. Charlie has done the same. Thank you, Navarathan. Good answers there. About 30 more seconds. I'm not going to tell you how many of those are considered as negative impacts, but I'll let you have a look through them. Last 15 seconds. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Elsa, as well. Some great answers coming in. Let's have a look at what we think are the correct answers here. They're up on the screen. So, negative impacts of high inflation. So we talk about price stability, that actually the objective is price stability, that what we want is prices to remain relatively stable at around about the 2% level in terms of our CPI measure. During the first part of this decade, we saw inflation get higher and higher and higher, reaching that height of just over 11% in 2022. So what is it that is the problem with high levels of inflation? Part of the problem is uncertainty. So part of the problem is when there's high levels of inflation, we don't know when it's going to stop, when it's going to get if it's going to get worse, or when it will start to come back down again. So when we have high levels, the level of uncertainty goes up, and as soon as we have uncertainty, what businesses start to do, they stop investing, they stop trying to make sure that they can grow, because they don't know how the economy is going to pan out over the next few months or next few years. So that uncertainty leads to sort of like businesses remaining static and not wanting to grow. Another big problem is that we have this rising inequality. What happens is if you're on welfare benefits, often they don't rise at the same level as high levels of inflation, and so the real value of welfare benefits and pensions likewise they don't necessarily rise at the same rate as inflation. So when we have low levels of inflation, benefits and pensions can keep up to date. Keep up with that one. And then we have this fall in the real value of our savings. So you put money into a savings account. Yes, that saving will accrue some interest, but if that interest rate is lower than the high rate of inflation, its real value, so its nominal value, is going up, but what it could purchase with that money starts to deteriorate and get worse. And then we've got a fall in international competitiveness. So if the UK has a higher inflation rate than other countries with whom they are competing, then those other countries start to become more attractive because the relative price of their goods starts to fall. And then we've got falling real incomes generally. So if our incomes don't rise at the same level as the rate of inflation, its real value starts to fall down. There we go. So disadvantages of high levels of inflation. Bubble quiz time, Nicky.
Bubble quiz. I love the bubble quiz. So it's a little bit like the multiple choice in that we're going to be asking you a question, but this time there might be 0 answers that are correct. It might be 1, it might be 2, it might be 3, it might be all 4. So what I want from you in the chat window is, for example, A and C, or you might think B, C and D. So type into the chat window what you think is the correct answer. Now, some of these are stinkers, so let's have your full concentration on these. First of all, let's start with this one. Which of these could be caused by an unequal distribution of income in the UK. So we've got unequal distribution of income. What might that lead to? So some people are earning a lot more than other people. What could be a consequence? Would it be one, two, three, or all of those? So Elsa's straight in with ABC. Navarathan's in with all four. Interesting, interesting. Bethany says A, B, C, D. Okay, let's have a look at the answer. You are absolutely spot on. Well done indeed, but this is quite tough. We can understand that the unequal distribution of income will lead to an unequal distribution of wealth because, of course, those earning high income will actually be able to buy more assets, more houses, more yachts, more antiques, all sorts of things. We know it will lead to significant wage differentials. So that's where you've got a difference between the CEO, the boss, and the people doing perhaps the work in the office or the cleaners or something like that, that wage differential. It can lead to regional differences in the quality of infrastructure. And that is because what it is, if you've got areas where you've got really high income earners, say, for example, London, we all know that the public transport in London seems to work so much better than it does in some regional and especially in rural areas. So regional differences, it can also mean that there's a lot more broadband rollout, much more 5G. That is included in infrastructure. We've got more train stations, etc. Now, this last one might need a little bit of thinking about. So high levels of unemployment, how can that be caused? Well, if you've got an unequal distribution of income and you've got a lot of people, say, earning high incomes, they can actually be buying lots of products, lots of income elastic products associated with high earners. And so that means that the jobs are only available maybe in those sorts of industries. And there isn't really the amount of products and goods and services needed for other people at other levels of income. And actually, maybe there just isn't enough jobs to go around. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Which of these could be considered a negative impact of unemployment on the economy as a whole? Let me see what you think the answer is here. So let's have a look and see if we are. I'm just going back to the chat, and Oliver has made quite a good point in the previous question. I'll come back to that in a moment. So Charlie is saying A, B, C, D. Navarathan is saying all four. Afra one is saying all of them. Elsa saying A, B, C, D. Right, let's have a stop and a think. So we've got to read the question carefully. So which of these could be considered a negative impact of unemployment on the economy as a whole? So just slow down and read it carefully, because now I've read it that way, emphasizing on the economy as a whole, you'd like to rethink. It can't be A, because that is about certain areas with high unemployment. So that's not the economy as a whole. It can't be C, because it is only those who are unemployed will suffer from self-esteem problems, but that is not the economy as a whole. So can you see, by just slowing down, all of you know the answer, but you just needed to slow down and read it very, very carefully before you jumped in. All of you have given me the answers, which are a negative impact of unemployment, full stop. But the question was on the economy as a whole. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on.
Just before we do, though, Nicky, I was also reading the interesting chat in the window about why doesn't the government increase in welfare benefits in the same rate as inflation. You said we'd have a bit of a chat about that. An interesting point from that question, of course. The examiner may be very specific about which economic agent they want you to concentrate on, and deliberately do so, don't they, sometimes, rather than just a generic all-round question. So the question is, why doesn't the government increase its welfare benefits at the same rate as inflation? And I guess the answer to that is sometimes they do or they attempt to do, but when it's at a relatively high level, that's a tricky thing for the government to be able to afford to do. Would you agree with that as a summary of why they may not raise it at the same rate?
And also, it's a way of cutting government spending, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. In real,
Reducing the amount.
yeah, in real terms, absolutely, yeah. Right. Sorry, we'll continue.
Okay, bubble quiz number 3. Which of these statements is true in relation to inflation? So we're going back to inflation. John said some nice things earlier and talked about inflation. And we had the umbrella quiz. So let's have a look. Which of these statements is true in relation to inflation? High inflation might lead to an increase in interest rates. Now, this one's tricky because you do have to think. You do have to think. If you've got high inflation, what is a policy to correct that? Well, one of the policies is monetary policy. And what might you do with monetary policy? You might raise interest rates to try and deal with that high rate of inflation. So you see, there's that extra step that we need to think about. Is CPI the measure of inflation? Who knows what CPI stands for? It is yeah, absolutely right, the Consumer Price Index. Well done indeed. So those two look pretty good. Consumption increases during prolonged periods of inflation. Well, have a think. We've had prolonged inflation recently. What do we think? Has consumption been increasing? What happens? How do people feel when there is inflation? And let's look at the last question. Demand pull is a type of inflation. Let's have a look and see. Okay, reveal the answers then, John. It is A, B, and D. Well done. So it's not C. We do not keep consuming because I get scared. I'm scared at the moment. I'm scared my salary won't go as far as it will with prolonged periods of inflation. And so you cut back. Okay. Brilliant. Really great answers. Look at all that. Okay. Which of these is likely to reduce the level of the UK's current account deficit? Stinker question. Okay, let's concentrate. Which of these is likely to reduce the level of the UK's current account deficit? Now, this quick reminder, the current account deficit, current account measures trade in goods, trade in services, primary income, and secondary income. Now it says reduce the deficit, reduce the level of the deficit. So we're going to make it more positive. We want it to go up. We're going to reduce the deficit. So what we're looking for? We are looking, let's have a think about the UK's exchange rate. Will get stronger due to increased confidence. I hope you all know SPICED, SPICED, strong pound, imports cheap, exports dear. So if the imports are cheap, we're going to be getting more and more imports in. So that's going to make our current account deficit worse. So it can't be A. Let's have a think about B. The Bank of England increases interest rates. If it increases interest rates, then you're going to get lots of money flowing in to the UK. And that is searching for those higher interest rates. It's called hot money. It's that money that swirls around looking for the highest interest rates. That's going to flow in. So it's going to make the exchange rate stronger. So we're going to go back to A. What that is going to do is actually make imports cheap again. The other thing with increasing interest rates is it's going to stop me spending because my mortgage rate goes up, my credit card bills go up. And that means that I can't spend so much on imports. So that works in the opposite direction. So that one is a little bit tricky. I'm going to let's see what. So Charlie's saying C and D. He said twice C and D. Boss Doubloon is saying C. Let's have a look. UK-based firms invest in new machinery. that improves productivity. Yes, that will work because we'll be more efficient. That means we'll export more, which means more money will flow into our current account, but not with the tariff charged by the US government on UK goods, because that means we will export less. So that was a real stinker, wasn't it? We really had to think that one through.
That was a stinker, absolutely. Well done to everybody who had a go at that one. Right, one more activity left to go. So let's have a look at this final one. Onto one of our on balance activities where we're asking you to type something into the chat window a little bit longer than just a letter or suggestions of what might be the correct answer. This time I want you to have a think about advantages and disadvantages of high levels of economic growth. Now, I'll let you have a think about that. Lovely to see some advantages coming into the chat window to begin with. If you've not heard, today the UK announced its latest economic growth rate, which is 0.7% for the first quarter of 2025, higher than many expected, and actually the highest of all the G7 countries. If you're aware of what the G7 countries are, the 7, if you like, most industrialised countries in the world. So UK economic growth rate is higher than most of our major competitors in the first quarter of 2025, which you could say is a very positive thing. But as students of economics, we are aware of the fact that not all of these things are positive. There are some positives and some negatives. So let's have a look, see what we've got. Boss the Balloon is coming with lower unemployment, but maybe higher inflation rates. Higher employment rate, Bethany. And I like the difference between the use of employment and unemployment. It's key. It's an important thing to remember the difference between. Potential, Charlie saying potentially demand pull inflation. Elsa says could result in a recession. That's an interesting point to make, Elsa. You could make that argument, but you clearly need to have a lot more explanation, just that phrase. Bethany's also talked about the issue with balance of payments. Charlie says GDP increases, so the quality of life increases. Now that's a really interesting argument, Charlie, because I think that's a very fair point to say. We talk about economics and we imagine that economics is just about monetary value, but actually money brings us a different quality of life, so you can make that argument very, very carefully. Yes. Charlie's also talked about economies of scale that might occur in an economy. Another great argument. Let's have a look at what we've got here. So yeah, higher standards of living. That's my way of saying what was there in the chat window. Higher standards of living. So we've got more income, we can purchase more, and that might lead to higher levels of satisfaction or what we sometimes call utility in economics. Higher rates of employment. Difference between employment and unemployment, as I was mentioning before. So yeah, if we've got economic growth, again back to that confidence things, if we've got higher economic growth, businesses are more likely to invest, more likely to expand, more likely to employ people. Disadvantages though, the big one is externalities. So we talked about pollution, I think, in the chat window. A great word to use, of course. Bringing in stuff from your microside, if you're for some awarding bodies. Externalities from consumption may be higher. If we've got more money, we're going to spend it on things which maybe aren't so good for the environment. And then potentially higher inflation, potentially greater levels of demand pull inflation. Well done to everybody who had a go at that one. Brilliant stuff again tonight, Nicky. Wonderful to see those answers. Wonderful to see so many people keep coming back to the live streams and giving us their answers. That's really great to see.
Spotted that fantastic chain of reasoning from Kachi. Well done. That's brilliant.
I didn't. Oh, yes, I'm reading it now. Yes, wonderful. Brilliant stuff.
Really
Thank
good.
you. Now, listen, we've got one more of these left. We are going to do another live stream next Tuesday at 5 o'clock, just before paper 2. A little bit like Tuesday just gone, we're going to be concentrating a little bit on the numerical questions that you might get asked, just to give you some more technical on that. But I think we'll do a little bit of a broader approach to what we cover on Tuesday as well. So do join us for that. Hopefully you found tonight useful. If you have, please just do give us a thumbs up in the in YouTube, so that we get our message out there to a further group of people. And if you want to look at some of these questions again, of course you can rewatch the video, or you can download the PowerPoint that Nicky and I have been using, which should be available in just the next few minutes as soon as I've pressed finish. Thank you to Nicky. Thank you to everybody who's been involved tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.